Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dawn of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 32, which is called Conversations. So very important, very good chapter, similar to the next one as well, which just continues the conversation from this chapter, but sort of a little bit more plot relevant. This is like the introduction here, as Yangchen meets the sort of lead lotus of this Order of the White Lotus safe house, and it's revealed to be Mama Ayunarak from earlier on in the book. So that's a really interesting reveal. But the whole chapter isn't just about that reveal, it's about the conversation that the two have. And it's a big comparison about basically the way Yangchen views the Order of the White Lotus and the way the Order of the White Lotus view how Yangchen is as an avatar. Their sort of philosophies on helping the world really get sort of compared here, and we get into a lot of detail on it, like Yangchen's character and a little bit more of a sort of realistic kind of viewpoint, I suppose, on the Order of the White Lotus, that they're not just this legendary organization who are amazing, that there are flaws to the way they operate, and they get pointed out here by Yangchen. So let's jump into this chapter. There's a lot of detail here. So of course, Yangchen's outside with the three unconscious guards. People come out, they take them in. So the White Lotus are going to kind of monitor these guards here. Yangchen is let in. She sleeps for an hour, and then when she wakes up, she is met by the lead lotus of the safe house. Immediately she introduces herself as just Mama. So it's this interesting point where, like, if you have forgotten about Mama Ayunarak from earlier on in the book, I don't blame you if you don't connect the dots here, because the first time I read the book, I certainly didn't. And then I went back and was just like, oh, Mama Ayunarak, Mama, like the book sort of does it towards the end, but it's not like as clear-cut as you would maybe want it to be. It's like if you really don't pay attention, you maybe don't get the connection here. But, you know, just to be aware, like, I don't really think it's a spoiler to say it here, but Mama is Mama Ayunarak. So, from earlier on in the book, if you forgot, Yangchen gave Kavik some money during their first meeting. He gave that money to Ayunarak to help with the food that she's giving to the people who are less well off. Yangchen asked Kavik about, who did you give the money to? I was tailing you from behind. I didn't see who you handed the money off to. And he does tell her that, like, I gave it to a woman named Ayunarak. So this chapter really revolves around a little bit of the idea of Yangchen came close to meeting or seeing Ayunarak in the earlier chapters, but didn't. And so Ayunarak is aware that Yangchen was around, but Yangchen was not aware of her. So there's a little bit of that going on here as well, as we'll get into. So Yangchen gets some food here, meatless of course, and she just again notes the idea that Yangchen is so starving because she's used so much energy that she notes that the Western Temple would have forgiven her for eating a dish with meat in it, but she appreciates that they're, you know, considerate and gave her food without meat. Then we get Mama beginning to speak here, and she just says, the paths of the White Lotus and the Avatar normally only intertwine during moments of generational import. Not because someone needs to stash a few bodies. I don't know how one of your past lives got access to our recognition codes, but it was a mistake to let it happen. And Yangchen's just like, how do you know it wasn't me who got access to your codes? And she says, because you're an amateur. You're the rankest sort of amateur there is. You're too active, you do too many things yourself on the operation, and you expect results too quickly. You've no ability to wait whatsoever. So straight away we get the idea. Ayunarak is extremely critical of Yangchen and how she conducts herself as the Avatar. Very much immediately presenting the idea of the White Lotus like to wait and act at key moments. And she's criticizing Yangchen for basically not doing the same and instead choosing to act and try and get things done immediately. Now, I think over the course of the book, we're more on Yangchen's side in this conversation because we know why she feels she has to act quickly and why she tries to get things done immediately, because otherwise she's encountered a lot of people who will just stall you out and not do anything. So you really have to sort of force them to get anything done, and that's the big part of this situation. It is nice to know that, you know, they full on confirm that, yeah, Yangchen knows the recognition codes because a past avatar knew them, not that she actually knew them. So that's an important thing. But just that, yeah, the White Lotus are not like jumping at the opportunity to help the avatar. They're like, no, this only is meant to happen during big moments in history. And that is something I think to be somewhat critical of the White Lotus for waiting. And that's what the narration goes into here. They're like, this is why she didn't ask for favors from the White Lotus. This meant that, you know, she reflects on a bunch of recent situations. It meant that they sat back and just watched as the aftermath of Tianhaixia happened, the rift, the whole city needing to be relocated. The Order of White Lotus didn't act then. And she just notes that the White Lotus, like everyone else, had turned their eyes away from the immense suffering and done nothing. She couldn't forgive that. And Yangchen immediately kind of like tries to change the conversation a little bit here and get down to business of like, you're from the north, you're not from the south, you're not the local depot keeper here. Like, you don't run this facility by yourself. You're just here for other reasons. So what are you investigating? How about we do this like the professionals do it then? If you're calling me an amateur, let's get a little bit more professional here. Let's do an information exchange. You tell me what you're doing here and I'll tell you something. And Mama's just like, stop. Just stop. Stop playing around and for once think about what kind of avatar you want to be. So again, Mama really wants to sort of scold Yangchen for how she is as the avatar. And Yangchen is not, you know, listening to this. She says this like in her head. She's thinking this. You mean what kind of figurehead? How should I pose for my statue? Have the people around me been sufficiently awed by my presence? How long did awe feed a person anyway? How long did it keep them warm? So it's very much a Yangchen kind of approach there of like, the avatar you want me to be is not an avatar who helps, you know, people who are actually in trouble. It doesn't like help people who don't have food get fed. And she's just like, what do you mean by that? You know, she says, you think spying and intelligence and deception is a good use of your power. Such a waste when you, more than anyone else in history, could inspire people with the truth instead. And this needs an explanation. So Mama goes on and says, practically every avatar struggles to communicate with their past selves. But you, the wealth of knowledge and wisdom at your fingertips, if you embraced your gift, walked with your predecessors along the courses of their lives, to the breadth and depth you alone among the generations seem to be able to, then there would be no limit to your accomplishments. You could guide the four nations to a new gilded era, because you were there for the old ones. And that's quite a sort of stinging statement in so many ways of like, she's really getting across that like, this is how you should be as the avatar. You have this gift, this special way where you have much more open conversations with the past avatars. You should be able to learn every detail from history and incorporate them in the modern day to create these new gilded or golden ages of humanity, like the best eras from the past. And it seems nice. That seems like a pretty good way to do things, but we'll get the reality of that a little bit later on. What Yangchen focuses on is, how do you know about my gift? The whole Yangchen being plagued by the voices of past avatars thing is a secret that is known only to her and a couple of the high-up nuns at the Western Air Temple. No one else should know about it. And so, logically, what happens here is that Yangchen figures out, wait, the Order of the White Lotus had a member in the Western Air Temple in my home. And this is the big thing. This gets repeated a lot. You know, you had someone in my home. Yangchen is hurt by this, that in a way she views like these key early years of her childhood where she really defines as being, you know, that's her life. Those are her memories. And now they've been sort of in a way defiled by the fact that there was basically someone spying on her the entire time, and for the Order of the White Lotus. And it's this real moment where, like, I think even Mama can see just how hurt Yangchen is by this. But she just says, "You were the most important child in the world. You were unstable. It would have been irresponsible not to monitor you. You know, that was my home. Do you not understand? That was my home." And she's kind of like almost, she stands up, you know, she sort of like collapses down to the ground. Like, she's really broken by this. Her childhood in the Western Temple was supposed to be the part of her that was real, the part free of manipulations and ulterior motives, and it was gone now. It had been painted with the same dirty ink as every other operation that had gone on in the history of the Four Nations. And then she starts to speculate about, wait, who was it then? I probably knew the person who was spying on me. Could it have been Dagmola or Sering answering to the White Lotus? Was she to suspect Boma forevermore? And Jetson, if Jetson had masters outside the temple, had been feigning sisterhood with Yangchen to get an outcome better suited to their needs, then there wasn't a Yangchen. There was no person inside the robes. She'd be just as the Phoenix Eel said, an empty shell with no yolk inside. So this has really broken Yangchen, this reveal here that she was spied on by the White Lotus. And because we find out that I guess she's been suspecting like Boma a little bit the whole time about his motives, but now, like she says, this has now, you know, muddied the waters on even the parts of her life she thought was the pure part of her life. That now she is thinking like a spy about the most important people in the world to her. She has to suspect that it could have been Jetson. And what if it was? And that's a key thing to her, that she hates that she has to think this way about those points in her life. And I think Mama realizes just how much this is a hit her, and she does go over to Yangchen to sort of comfort her. She says that she's sorry, but this is where Yangchen sort of just like is like, I tried it. And Mama Yunarak's like, wait, what? Because the conversation moved on a little bit. Your suggestion, I sought out the avatars of eras gone by. And we go through this, you know, detailed, you know, description here of the idea that Yangchen has contacted dozens upon dozens upon dozens of past avatars. She describes that like she has literally, you know, experienced the lives of past avatars, but she has sat in front of them and asked many, many questions. So she has had the more typical Avatar past life communications as well. She mentions that, you know, I only let the elders know about a fraction of my successes. What she says here, I saw through their eyes, watched their lives unfurl. Time doesn't pass the same way inside a vision as it does in the physical world. At first I was overwhelmed by the noise of it all. As someone who appreciates intelligence, I'm sure you understand the sheer quantity of information you have to sift through to find something relevant. And then I started noticing patterns over the eras. I witnessed repetition. I sat in front of my predecessors humbly, asked so many questions, listened to so many answers. Do you know what I learned? Their lives are full of regret, lost chances to make the world a better place. To me, that's what sticks out sharpest in their memories, their regrets over the times they did nothing. So Yangchen really hitting home the point that the reason I am the avatar that I am, the one that you disagree with being very, very active, is because the one thing I learned from all the past avatars is that they all wish they were more active. None of them wish they had waited on a situation. They all wish they had done more and more of it. And then, you know, she gets a look from Ayunarak that's like, why are you like this? And she says, I have felt the shame of avatars gone by, lived through failures not recorded in history, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, not a single one of my past selves that I've connected with wishes they'd waited longer to solve a problem. And then she doesn't say this, but in her head she's thinking, acting only in moments of generational import. Who decided which moments were important? And how many people suffered in between? There had never been any gilded ages as far as Yangchen had seen. So really just cutting down every aspect of the point that like a Unarak was making is that what are these golden eras you're talking about that you want us to achieve again? None of them were perfect. There were always problems. So which one is the one filled with like the least problems? Which is the one we actually choose to learn from? Every avatar has regrets about how they handled some situation or another and how that might have solved one problem here, one problem there. That's the reality of this situation, that sure, it seems great. And in the same way that, like, say, Kavik from a bunch of chapters ago said, shouldn't you be out there, maintaining the peace? And Yangchen's just like, what does that even mean? And it's a similar thing here of like, you really think I can just, talk about Avatar history and that will just change everything? That's not how this works. Not in the idealistic way you think it is. Now, obviously, there is a sense to this that it's still not very specific. It doesn't describe like which avatars she spoke to, in that it must imply at least that at least one of those conversations was with her predecessor, Avatar Zito. And I'm hoping that we eventually, like in the next Yangchen book, get into some of those details, so she has maybe a slightly different kind of like change of mind where she comes to realize that like the past avatars can offer her some information. It's just not everything that is needed. That's the kind of key point. But Mama, after hearing this, breaks the silence and is finally like, okay, I come here from the north on a regular basis to meet with my fellows, but this time I'm in town to investigate a possible spiritual disturbance. There have been reports of bright lights and loud noises along the tundra outside the city. And Yangchen's just like, oh, we're doing the information exchange. That's all you have for me? Lights and noises? But Ayunarak is kind of like, I guess, but now that the Avatar's in town, I feel there's more relevance to it. And so Yangchen has to go in her head like, okay, do I go all in and just tell her why I'm here? Do I tell her about the unanimity or not? Can I trust the White Lotus? And she just decides that, like, they helped me with the 3 guards I knocked out. She couldn't let her pride be the reason she failed. Not at this juncture. I hope I don't regret this. And she says, I'm not following up on spiritual business. Yangchen said she told Mama everything she knew about unanimity. So she comes clean and just full on reveals all this information about this much bigger plot going on. And what we'll see in the next chapter is that there is a relevance to what a Unarak is investigating. The two things are actually interlinked, that this is effectively, like, she was here, and one of the points that we know is true, testing on the weapon was done in the south. A Unarak, what she's investigating, is effectively what people heard of that testing. They're the lights, that's the sounds, and then the next chapter is all about the two of them connecting the dots, and on this side of the story, without Kavik, them coming as close as they can to finding out what unanimity is. Just before we cut to a Kavik chapter that will explain it to us properly. So lots of important stuff happening here. But the main takeaway here is definitely the character stuff. I think this is an amazing Yangchen chapter that if you want to understand who Yangchen is as the Avatar and why all these dynamics are the way they are, I think this is the chapter. This is why she's so active. This is why she doesn't particularly like to talk about like the other past avatars, because she's in her mind, she has mainly experienced, I suppose, the trauma of those past avatars, the fact that they all have regrets and failures, and they really can't offer her solutions to problems in her era, and so she doesn't really feel like it's as much of a benefit as so many other people actually would. Similarly, just it's a unique thing that she is very critical of the White Lotus, but in a way where, like, I think you can't read this chapter and not feel that, like, yeah, that is a problem with the organization. And I think this is why in the aftermath of ATLA, obviously, we see the White Lotus become more public, especially as we go into the Korra era, that there was a need to not have it just be this sort of weird club that occasionally gets itself involved in major events. What about the mid-sized events or the small events that they could help to solve because of how skilled and intelligent they all are? That's the point Yangchen is making. And she sort of feels like if their main counterpoint to that is that I look like a amateur, like, spy master because I'm being really, really active, I'll happily take that because, in a way, I know I helped people. I put in so much effort to help people, whereas you just sat back and didn't do anything. So there's that sense of, like, the criticism on both sides is valid, but until there's a sense for, like, what is a better way for Yangchen to be the Avatar, she kind of comes out of this the better ultimately. Because ultimately, what are they going to decide to do here? Investigate and act on evidence here, actually be active about things. So that's an important take in all of this. But I love the connection, like, once you realize that it's Mama Ayunarak from the earlier chapters. And that's the point, is that, like, she doesn't super stand out all that much. Like, she's just there. And then she is mentioned briefly by Taegum in his intro chapter as, like, okay, she's been around since before the Platinum Affair. He is familiar with her, but nothing massively hints at, like, yeah, she's Order of the White Lotus necessarily. But it's a very cool connection to have here as she, you know, properly comes into play here. I suppose learning that Yangchen has done past life communication in the normal way, directly saying that she has sat, like, in front of her predecessors and asked questions and got answers, is very different than the effectively being possessed and experiencing memories of past avatars. She mentions she has had visions, but she also mentions that she's done it the normal way. So Yangchen actually, I guess, is skilled enough. She's gained some level of control over this skill that she's done exactly as she's told. She has gone back generations in time. She says dozens upon dozens upon dozens. So, you know, if you take that literally, at least 36 avatars back in the past. But realistically, she's saying multiple dozens each time. So 72 avatars. So she's probably gone back in or around halfway through the avatar cycle, if she's gone through that many avatars. And she has learned one main thing, one connective tissue among all the avatars, is that they're the Avatar, of course, but that they all have their regrets for not being active enough. And that's a very interesting perspective, given that, like, when we get to, like, say, Aang having his interaction with the past avatars, Karuk is the one who is noted as being, like, the one who was the inactive avatar. But they all have regrets about that. It's just, it was egregious with him, but obviously we learned how he was active as the Avatar and how he kept that secret. But he still wishes he had done more beyond that. So, very interesting chapter. An Avatar meeting with an Order of the White Lotus high-ranking member, and a disagreement. Unexpected, but really good stuff. So we'll continue this on in the next chapter, 33 of course, but in the comments let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.